I'm launching a webinar for my estate planning practice. GoToWebinar is more expensive than I want to pay. What's the best choice for a similar, more economical setup for an evergreen webinar? Well, I don't know how much GoToWebinar costs. I guess I could Google it, but I just don't know. But I use EverWebinar for a lot of my stuff. And I think EverWebinar is like $500 for the year, which works out to less than $50 a month, which is pretty good. It's got a lot of really cool stuff. You can do email follow-ups from there, like automated email follow-ups. It's got really good tagging. So basically, like the way anyone that's been through my webinar, my webinar is like an hour and a half long. But the way that it works is you can tag people based on what parts of the webinar they've seen. So what I like to do with EverWebinar is I hook it up to ActiveCampaign, and I have it so that basically if someone shows up to the webinar, they get tagged as in they showed up to the webinar. And then if they see the offer, so if they show up to the webinar, they get tagged. If they leave before seeing the offer, they get tagged. If they see the offer, they get tagged. And depending on what action they take, I'm always trying to get them to the next step. So basically, and I can do all this with EverWebinar. So, if you're really running a solid marketing campaign, what I do is anyone that registers for the webinar but doesn't show up, I put them in an email sequence where my entire goal is to get them to show up to the webinar. My goal is to get them to watch the webinar and ultimately buy, but the goal of that email sequence is not to sell them, it's just to get them to watch the webinar. So then what happens, once they watch, let's say they watch the webinar, they stay 15 minutes and they leave, then what happens is I put them in another email sequence where the entire goal is to get them to come back, watch the webinar, and see the offer. And then if they see the offer, but they don't buy, then my entire goal is to get them to buy the offer. And EverWebinar allows you to do that by tagging people based on how much of the video that they saw. And I tie it together with ActiveCampaign, and it works really well. You can also use ClickFunnels. I've actually recently switched my entire webinar over to ClickFunnels. If you want to see my webinar, you can go to lawyermasterclass.com and see how I've done it. And the reason why I switched is just because I think that my market, I'm targeting lawyers. So there's a lot of stuff in EverWebinar. There's some downsides to EverWebinar that I'm not crazy about. And I think that eliminating some of that. So for example, I do these things with EverWebinar, it's all scheduled. So basically you can do these things called just-in-time webinars, which basically means the webinar will start 15 minutes, or basically it starts every 15 minutes. So if you get there at 10:35, it's going to say the next webinar starts at 10:45. If you get there at 10:46, it's going to say the next webinar starts at 11, basically. So there's never a just go in and watch the webinar. There's always like a waiting area. And I think with lawyers, I think I lose people that way. A lot of people do it and have success. And don't get me wrong, I still had success with that webinar, but I switched over to ClickFunnels because it's just a much easier platform, but it is more expensive than EverWebinar. If the starter plan of ClickFunnels is $97, if you do the Actionetics, which has a lot more features, that gets you up to, I think, $197 a month. And then I actually, because I've got so many contacts and I have so much traffic going through there, I end up spending almost $400 a month on ClickFunnels. So those are the two options that I would recommend. Now, if you're trying to do a regular webinar, I think a lot of people use Webinar Jam. I've actually used Zoom for live webinars. So there's a couple different options. EverWebinar is probably your cheapest. ClickFunnels might be your simplest, but it's more expensive. So hopefully that answers that question.